Welcome to the Wednesday, September 20th, 2023 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. Trustee, will you call the roll for us, please?
Jocelyn Epicello.
Here.
David Gilbert.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson.
Here.
Dan Jasnow.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Ken Shaw.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to dive right in with board communications and presentations. We have a bunch of them tonight. We're going to begin with the 2023-2024 board annual goals. So since the last time we met, this document has been posted in Dusty Google Docs for me to edit. I didn't see a lot of changes in there, and since we last met, also have received Carl's letter for retirement, which congratulate him on retirement, of course. But that does sort of change what our focus will be as a board for the year, because we do need to bring a superintendent search into the year. So what I would like to propose is that we can either discuss them tonight, or we can add that in as a goal of the superintendency search and come back to the next meeting for goals. I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts.
Is that really a goal, or is it just like we're so obviously going to do it? It's not really like, you know, something that it's going to change annually. You know, it's more like on our to-do list.
You look at that. It's the biggest thing we do. Yes, that was hiring. It's the only person that reports to the board is the superintendent. So I think it's going to take up a lot of time this year. To the day we have with the other goals as well.
I would propose that we put on the list of things to do and cut back to it.
Okay.
Yes.
Consensus on that? All right, think about that question then, and we'll come back to it. You can edit the document at any time in Google Docs, so we have thoughts, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next time. Thank you. All right, now we get to everyone's favorite discussion of the NISBA resolutions. So everyone has the packet with the resolutions that you were able to review. What I thought we would do is start out with anybody does not. So again, what will happen is you'll go to the meeting as a representative. I believe it's Zoom still, right? And vote for our district. There are a bunch in here that NISBA recommends. Some are sunsetting, as last time. In order to move this along, I thought anyone wishes for us to vote no, or has one they wanted to talk about as we could address those. So if you could, instead of going one by one through all of them, so that we're not here all week.
There are a couple that I looked at quickly last night, so I start 19. So I don't know if we want to jump in.
Let's do. All right, so 19 is the first one I've had brought up. Anybody else? Let's go to 19.
So this one relates to the feasibility, conducting a feasibility study review of utilities infrastructure for the zero emission school vehicle mandate.
Okay.
Which I don't necessarily object to, but I was curious if Carl or Joe could shed light on whether any of that has already been done, or if you think there's a need for further study or reevaluation of the zero emission community.
I'll begin and then I'll turn it over to Joe. So we did last year apply for an EPA grant. Yeah. And the way the grant was, federal grant, and basically high needs districts, high needs urban districts or rural districts, and poor districts, we're given preference as a maximum. What we're hearing, the feedback is that the manufacturing of electric vehicles really is not where it needs to be. So many districts that are approved are still waiting on buses. So with that, we understand that it's going to take some time. As far as the feasibility of the cost, Joe, in our grant, our understanding was that we obtained grant money, there would be an overall cost savings to the district. However, if we needed to purchase those vehicles, roughly 3 times the cost of a diesel vehicle.
Yeah, a 66 passenger bus is between 300 and 400,000, which is significantly more than a diesel bus of the same size. And then that doesn't include the charging infrastructure, which obviously, being a large vehicle is more involved than what you would charge a car at your house. It's a much larger capacity upgrade to the amount of electricity that gets provided to it. So it is a difficult thing. As far as us using a contractor, contractors have said to us, essentially, if you want an electric bus, we can provide it, but obviously you absorb the cost of us purchasing the you. Right? So it's prohibitive.
Yeah. So as is, and the mandatory deadline, this resolution says it isn't until 2035. And again, the resolution just says, we want this to further study the feasibility of compliance, but our understanding at the moment is that this would be a district cost, right, for the buses, and there's no other funding.
But the funding is limited as far as the pot that from the federal perspective, there are more people applying than are eligible, and due to our not being considered high need in terms of that grant, it wouldn't cover a large enough portion for us to take money. Yeah.
Can I just say, just related to that, because I was just at a recent Climate Smart meeting, and NYSERDA, which is now New York, is releasing their guidelines very soon for the grant, the New York State grant, and it seems much more promising with their high need. But of course, it is about covering the difference in cost between cheap and electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just finish up. The resolution does make sense. We need to understand the cost of it. I think we know here in a small district, it's not difficult to figure it out. Grant from the buses, or at some point if production ramps up and prices come down, it could be feasible at some point in the future. As far as the state really breaking down the cost for districts, I see no issue with that. That would be helpful.
So that answered your question, and on that one, then, okay, that changed.
No, it doesn't change my thoughts on it. There's another resolution which the New York State Bar Association recommends against, which I think is to kill the mandate entirely. So this resolution is basically just saying the New York State School Board Association supports further study of the feasibility of the mandate. So I'm good with that. So I think from my perspective, the state School Board Association's recommendation
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We have an earlier one as well that was a sunset and one talking about. Whether the state mandate funded, or if there's another one exempt of the tax, I have to remember, have unfunded mandate exempt from tax. Happens as well. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Number 38 or 38.
I have one
Oh.
438. If you want.
Okay, yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
numerical.
Sarah, I'm sorry, but bring the poor mics a little bit closer.
That
Or having trouble hearing with that.
Okay.
So I had a question on 34, which is the New York State School Board Association recommends against. The resolution calls for mandatory kindergarten, which, my understanding is that there's a lot of advantages to mandatory kindergarten. Most school districts, I think offer that. We do. And I just wonder if, we should take a position on supporting mandatory kindergarten. The way that the law is currently drafted is that schools have a local decision whether or not to implement kindergarten. But, you know, do we want to support a resolution that says mandatory?
Just for what it's worth. I think it's kind of ridiculous that kindergarten is not mandatory. It would be great if pre-K were mandatory and they were fully funding it. We've certainly been advocating for that. That being said, it doesn't necessarily impact us. I think this is considered districts that can't afford it, budget crisis, and they decide, for example, to have a half-day kindergarten, morning session, and afternoon session. Right now, under the law, that's allowed. So, it's a tricky question. I think there's no impact to us here in Garrison. I think the support is there always. Now we have support for pre-K. But it does seem a bit ridiculous, just based on research that the state would want full day and to be a requirement for all districts. But the funding is.
Are there districts in the state that don't have full day kindergarten?
Very few. Very few. So in this region, about 10 years ago, there were maybe 2 districts that had half day kindergarten. I only know that because my home district was one of them, but that was an old model. There was a thinking that kindergarten was really just socialization and that children had attention spans and it was a way to ease them into school. I think now we realize that there's a lot of really important learning that happens at those early stages. So, if my knowledge in this region, everyone has full day kindergarten. There could be a few districts that are financially that can't afford it. Jen, are you aware of any? I can't think of one.
I mean, why is this a sunsetting proposition? It says.
Yeah.
So does that just mean that?
They expire after so many years, so they just want to.
But that means it was approved.
It was approved
And now they want to.
Then they want to reapprove it.
No.
No, they said no.
The recommendation is to let it sunset
Let it-
because
Yeah.
the language now says,
Right.
School districts can decide at their option whether or not to make it mandatory.
Yeah, and the DDI, they recommended that people should support it and not let it sunset.
The only one that really jumped out to me is maybe one.
I would support it. But again, doesn't have reference, but I see no. The only thing is, I do feel like sometimes this takes on so many different resolutions. How can I possibly actively advocate all these issues? This is an important one. So,
What do we want to support?
consensus to support it? All right. Any other stands before we go over it?
Any prior to 38?
No, not right, 38.
So we're gonna go to 38 next. Okay.
So this was one that I did want to oppose or vote no on. Because I don't think that we should oppose legislation or budget initiatives that will allow New York State to overrule local zoning ordinances. I think that should be allowed and the proper processes are in place to make sure that there are people making decisions about zoning ordinances for the right reasons and following the right rules.
Wait, these double negatives are messing.
Yeah,
This one, 38 is NISBA is proposing to not, is proposing to oppose it. Is that what it is?
Right. Yeah, this was proposing.
And you're saying,
Propose this one.
you're proposing that we don't,
Oppose or
yeah, that we don't oppose it.
We want to support this resolution.
No, we don't want to support this resolution. If the resolution is to oppose.
So we're saying no,
I'm saying we want to
no to the opposition.
no to the opposition.
So as written, you like this resolution and want to.
No,
support it.
as written, I do not like it.
Got it.
I don't want to
So
support it.
so you're
I
agreeing
want to
with
vote
it.
no.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Sarah asked, is there anything we want to vote no on? That's why this one I want to.
I thought the no list would be shorter than the yes list, and in the interest of time, I thought that was the place to start.
No, I mean, okay, I agree.
So this is a no, and do I have consensus
So
on a
you
no
agree
vote?
to agree.
I agree to agree and not agree.
And to vote no.
All right. Good job, guys. All right, any others that anyone wants to address specifically?
We're going in order. No, keep going.
Another-
Yeah, of course.
So resolution 44 was submitted by the Beacon School Board and says, resolved, New York State School Board supports, School Boards Association supports legislation that would require the state to develop and fully fund climate change curricula for all public elementary and secondary schools in New York State. I just want to throw it out there for discussion. I think it's obviously a commendable goal, neighboring district. The New York State, NISBA's position on it is that we don't support any resolutions on mandatory curriculum, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Legislating curriculum. So, you know, I'd be inclined to follow the NISBA recommendation on that, but, you know, just curious if everyone else. feels the same way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would follow the NISBA recommendation. I mean, I think it's important, but how every school addresses it can be a local issue without mandating curriculum. That is.
I know, I feel last year I wanted to support every neighboring district's proposal. So I also feel you on that.
I think it's
Without
commendable
funding.
that they took the initiative to send in. All right, consensus. So opposed. Just so opposed. Please, and any, especially because you're going as our voting representative, any you have questions on that you want to make sure you understand the board's position, please bring them.
And then I had just 55. That the New York State Board Association supports legislation at the state level that would set limits on the start time for schools to be no earlier than 8 a.m. And I would oppose that. I think it would be a hardship on us and a lot of other districts if the state said nothing can start before 8 a.m.
I think, and I would want to understand the impact to the extracurricular activities.
Especially extracurricular and sports,
Especially
as it gets darker earlier. So they said there was, the DEI committee had no position, but I feel strongly that we should vote no.
Yeah, we debated this last year too. This one's always, I wonder if Hicksville is always the one.
We'll look them up, see.
See what
starts,
yeah.
Yes, here's how they start. Are we comfortable then with the no vote on 55?
Yes.
Any others? So do you feel comfortable that you have the information you need? Okay?
Yeah.
I think that was our fastest discussion of the NISBA resolutions. Congratulations. We're going to go ahead and move on from that. If you have any follow-up questions, please send them to Dan. Go from there. Okay. I believe it's mid-October that you go for that vote, right? Next, we have a transportation update, Joe.
Yes. So it's good to be back to talk about transportation again, because obviously the first time we talked about transportation, we were 2 days into the school year, and what I could say is we definitely we're definitely much smoother as far as the way transportation is operating than we were then. The number of issues and complaints have dropped significantly, and we generally don't have them on a daily basis or anything like that anymore. What I can also say is we did meet with all the large bus drivers today, and in general, the feedback from them is that the schedules are working. They can get the students to where they need to be within the time that we have set, and that's not an issue. The ridership on the buses it's obviously the most is on the elementary, and that is typically between 20 and 40 is the number. The bus that has the most on it is the C bus, followed by the A, and then the B had the least amount. And then the small bus has anywhere between 5 and 9 students on it at any one time. in past years, we typically did route more than 60 students to a bus, and we did that same this year. But instead of being one bus that was like that on a general basis on the elementary, we had two. So obviously it was, it was a little bit unknown as to how many students would actually ride, but on a regular basis, it's between 20 and 40, which is manageable for those buses. We transport a couple students to Putnam Valley, and that appears to be working. We are also doing our activity buses and the buses that pick up the tech ed students at the high schools, as we were doing last year. And the special education runs are working the way we intend. We do have some of them are being done in-house, and some are being done with contractors. So it is much smoother. It is working, and as we go, I don't see any large changes or anything happening to routes. And one thing I will say, we do have one route. The B bus arrives at school pretty early as far as when it's scheduled versus when it actually gets here. So we may in the near future look at moving the times on that route back by a few minutes in order that the bus isn't waiting here with kids on it for a long time before school's open. It's getting here between 8:10 and 8:15, and it really could get here 5 to 10 minutes later. So I think we have it's running well on the high school side. Obviously, the ridership is much less on high school. We're looking at in the tens as far as the number of students on the bus in the afternoons. Sometimes it's less. Because obviously, once kids are in sports or once they drive, there's a lot less in the afternoons that are around the bus. And we don't have any issues with the buses being back here in time to take the elementary students home. We used to have issues where we'd be waiting for one bus to arrive, and we dismiss the other buses, and the kids would still be waiting here for that last bus to show up. We don't have that issue, so that's definitely an improvement.
Have any questions for Joe? For fun.
So 20 to 40 kids per bus, how does that compare to where we were either at the start of the year, which I guess is usually higher anyway, but last year ridership?
It's in the ballpark. What I will say is last year we used to have one large bus that would typically on the elementary have less than 10 kids, and we don't have that, with the exception of the real small bus.
And so you said no major changes are being considered, but I assume that if we're getting feedback from the community that certain stops are from the bus drivers, that certain stops are not being utilized at all, is there an opportunity to potentially get some efficiencies in rerouting, or just see what kind of changes can be made to existing routes in light of the change or the actual ridership numbers that we're seeing?
I don't think we'll necessarily change the routes at large. What is happening and what we're seeing is the times are less than what is allotted. So if there are stops that we don't utilize, we drive past them and we do the next one. There isn't really a way necessarily to stop driving on any particular roads or skip big sections or anything like that. But there are stops that we don't have to stop at anymore. The ridership.
And in terms of, I'm wondering, I know that there's some parents that have requested changes, for example, and I think when we talked about it last time, the response had been that, well, it could have significant impacts on the routes and the scheduling. I'm wondering if now we can be a little bit more lenient in terms of, making some of those, convenience changes because the buses are more efficient, they're making fewer stops, they're picking up fewer people, if we can reevaluate some of those requests in light of the new data.
Typically, no, just as far as the fairness issue, because if we started granting those as a small community, people will find out about those things, and it would be hard to say no. Typically, if there's a request that comes that would save time and save the amount of time of all the students on the bus, then we would look at it. But it's not one of those we in general would.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the fairness piece, but I would, I think parents are going to make it known if it's a big concern to them, and if their parents that have repeatedly made it known that they would like a change, and it doesn't disrupt the schedules, especially if we have lower ridership numbers. I personally would encourage the district to look hard at making some of those changes. Everybody knows we're talking about transportation now, so I think people have made their concerns known, and if there's no reason not to make them, if it's just sort of obviously fairness is important, but if it's a sort of abstract notion of fairness in the district and that we're going to be flooded by requests, I think we should consider what we have in front of us based on the new data and lean toward making concessions to people that have requested them or feel very strongly about it, rather than just having a no policy in general. I also would note that the White Plains school bus manual, they talk about on October 1st deadline, they take written requests for changes to the school district or to the busing schedule until October 1st. All requests have to be, received by October 1st. They make no guarantees that any changes will be made, but then they review all the changes and make those changes. And I think,
Can you say home field land that you read that?
of course, I read the whole thing. So I would just,
New school board.
I personally feel very strongly that we should not just have a blanket no policy in the interest of fairness. I think people are making their concerns known, and we should make an effort to hear those and respond.
I just have a question. So, we talk about ridership and the way it is today, but if a child decides tomorrow, if their parents decide tomorrow they want to ride the bus will still take that route, and the children are standing at the stop that picked up. Yeah, so it's not like we can just start change. Nobody's gotten on that bus this year, so we're going to skip that area. We're going to move this around. So that's part of the concern, right, with making changes.
Yes.
That if all of a sudden tomorrow my job changes, my kid's got to go to the bus. You still got to go down the road.
Correct.
You have, I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Just speaking to Dan's point, I really take your point about that. I guess the question in my mind is, okay, if there are some requests are justifiable and others are not, is there a way to create some kind of a standard, some kind of a line that distinguishes justifiable from not?
Yes, there is, and I think the first thing that comes across is safety. We have had some requests where parents have asked us to allow their students to cross a road that's got a double line on it, and we won't honor those requests. So that's the first piece of safety. The second piece is, how does it impact the time? Are we capable of doing it as far as time? And the third piece is by doing this change, will this affect others in a negative way? So those are the kind of the basic criteria that we use. And we do get requests in, and we do have a system in place for when a student is going to a friend's house and all that kind of stuff. And that all still exists, and it works in just another part of the system. And we do that. Every day there are sheets that are printed out and distributed to the driver so they know what the changes are for today, like as far as who's getting picked up when they're normally on the bus, all that kind of stuff. So that all happens and continues to happen this year as it has in the past, and we do that. But when requests come in as far as changing the stop or can you do this, we look at it with those three basic things and then evaluate it from there. We don't just flat say no to everyone that sends a letter. That's definitely not what happens, but we look at it with those criteria.
And I'll just add to what Joe was saying, to your point, it's not just a straight no. We had a few families raise concern about a particular stop, about the safety of the stop. So Joe and I went out to look at the stop. The families, basically said, gee, Joe's not a bus driver, Carl, you're not a bus driver, which they're correct. So Joe did arrange for a veteran bus. What is his title, Joe?
19A examiner.
19A examiner. He's trained bus drivers for his entire career and went out and evaluated the stop and in some other parts of the routes for us. And we will get back to those families. So we're not just telling people no, hard no changes. We're listening. And I think if it makes sense and there's no negative impact to others, as Joe said earlier, I think there's some room for flexibility. But to Ken's point, if right now, if you go into a neighborhood and, there are 3 possible children that could ride buses and they just happen to not be accessing the transportation now, you don't want to cut out that neighborhood completely because things could change for families. And if they want the bus, we do need to provide them. We have a legal obligation to do so. So I think major changes are out of the question from my perspective, but there may be some room for some adjustments.
When you said adjusting the times, is that just bringing it back for everybody, like 5 minutes later
Yes.
start, so
Yep.
where they used to run?
Yeah, so that particular bus, its first stop, if we move that back, between 5 and 8 minutes or something, and it moved everything else back 5 or 8 minutes, and then by the time it's getting here, it's more of an appropriate time that will still allow for when the weather is bad, that things take longer and still be here in time for the opening of school. So that's what I'm talking about. Just that one, the B route, in the morning, we would move the times for that.
I would propose that we consider opening up an open invitation to the families to submit their requests, should they have them, and put a deadline of October 10th, whatever date, and see what we get. And what I mean is, we know we've heard from some parents. They may be the same ones to submit, so they already expect the answer, right? That you've already done due diligence. But you may get parents who don't necessarily feel like they have the privilege of writing to you and asking for things, and opening it up to everybody and saying, there's a comment period, allows a few other families to maybe trickle in with valid concerns. And then it's also just for everyone. Everyone does it. Now it's going to mean, and then what it means is when you reevaluate all of the requests, you reevaluate them all together, as opposed to, if I change this one stop, it's going to change it here. But what if, so it allows for there to be a timeline to examine more today. This adds work, but I don't know.
I think that, one of the things I noticed when we were looking at White Plains, when we're in comparison with other districts, is they do say, give us a month to see how the routes are running.
Sure.
Here's the format, here's the process. So I think establishing a reasonable timeline that isn't the first 24 hours of school being open is reasonable as well. So,
Well, would we be willing to do this, perhaps open it up to a certain date, give folks 2 weeks or whatever
we'll
to
give them whatever time you would need to look at it, but then also be mindful
and
that
just submit, and then Joe gets however long he needs to reevaluate using the software. Maybe it's a month. I have no idea, but
So I do want to
something.
be mindful that some of what we did to make it more equitable was that some students last year had very long both morning and afternoon rides. And if we changed it so some students have shorter morning and shorter afternoon rides, that will impact the kids who suddenly
I understand that, but also if someone lives right near the school, it's an odd phenomenon to.
I've always, yeah.
Long ride, I know you deal with that.
45-minute ride.
And we'll be talking about that, but I think it's more about examining the blanket of requests together.
I think that would be fairness and equity would be to let everyone know that if they had a request, you had till October 15th to submit it, and then the district would evaluate it by maybe December 1st. And let people know, because people might not realize they can even make that request. And you're hearing from people who are upset, and maybe not from everybody who might have requests.
I think we hear from people that are upset and people that are just asking for something different than what we're providing. We hear from both.
Yeah. I do think though, to Jocelyn's point, I mean, if we could just send out, you know, in the newsletter, something just saying that, you know, any requests for changes need to be received by, you know, X date, October 1st, whatever it is. And then, you know, do one final assessment of everything holistically to see whether tweaks can be made. Maybe not completely redoing the routes, but just, you know, trying to address, you know, the concerns that people have raised or that they feel most strongly about, just to show that, you know, we're here.
But you have to couch it in that if other people move in, because you have an obligation if someone buys a house, right?
Yeah, if there is a new resident, you know, we have to make arrangements for whatever the new resident, how that fits into what we do. So, yeah.
I think we'll take a look at White Plains.
There isn't a particularly detailed handbook. When I put
It's a
the
little bit
question,
larger operation.
yeah, so when I put the question out to all the neighboring districts, it was really interesting to hear the feedback I got on how they're managing transportation. I mean, the average bus ride across the area is 45 minutes regardless. Some of these buses move back and forth, stop at multiple schools. They're all trying to run to capacity if they can. Now, they recognize if we do things that impact that, like sports and whatnot. It's interesting. I feel like I learned a lot by looking at some of the other policies.
I think
as
they
well.
limited it to only one request too. Like you can't request something like
With,
waiting for something like that.
well, yeah, but I mean, White Plains also has an interesting thing which I don't know if you read through that you can only have one stop. So like if you have your child going to a daycare, you can't suddenly one day decide to have them from home. That's not allowed. If your pickup is at one parent's house and they have to divide their time between two parents, they can only pick one parent's house for a pickup. So a lot of districts have less flexibility than needed in terms of their transportation. But I thought the handbook in itself was a cool idea in that everything's put out there, you know, and it does list driver responsibilities, parent responsibilities, nice reminder not to pass school buses, which is still happening. Things like that. So, yeah. So, get back to us on what you think you can put in terms of like a timeline for that. Then. Any other questions on transportation before we keep going? Okay. Thank you. All right. The next is 2 items that also are related to transportation. And one is the discussion of a special district meeting. The next is the authorization. Now the authorization is only something we need to move forward with after our discussion, but it's on there given the timeline because it has to be written by council. We couldn't make this up if we decided. So I'm going to give a little bit of background as to why we're discussing this. The idea was to put forth a proposition about allowing the district to transport within 2 miles, as we have historically done. This is our current practice. However, as we learned last March, when we were discussing transportation during the budget process, we could not find that resolution. Now, Dusty has been looking for it all summer and been trying to find this resolution. I'm going to let Dusty explain the process she's gone through before we move forward as to what we have done as a district to be able to proposition currently.
Thank you. As we talked about before, when we started looking for any historical information or some sort of proof that maybe a proposition had been approved by the voters before, we started looking through the archives of all of previous budget votes or any special meetings. One of the things that came out of the capital project was being able to go through our records room pretty thoroughly and reorganize things so that it was much easier to search through the archives, their paper archives. I also through that process, and again, searching again this summer, we were able to work on some additional fine tuning in our area where we keep all the records. We still didn't find any evidence of a previous proposition that's been presented to the voters. I also had previously spoken to my predecessor, Beth Murphy, and Beth's predecessor, Betty Clune, I think, who was here for quite some time. And historically, neither one of them had any information regarding a proposition that had gone before the voters to authorize the transportation. So we've looked through newspaper archives. We've done, searches on, because legal notices would have been printed. Legal notices would have been kept also in the archives because those are required to be part of the permanent record, and we sent them.
So, having done this and not found the authorization, I am proposing this, and I'm proposing it now versus during budget season, because I don't believe from our discussions last year that this is a budget question, more as a safety question as to we don't have sidewalks, we're a rural community. So my thought had been that if we put the proposition to voters outside of the regular budget process and say we would like to authorize transportation within 2 miles, as we have been doing, the budget impact now, we know we can do it with the 3 buses. We're currently transporting everyone. It won't change a slight change in the cost, but it's less than what it costs to send one child to high school, basically. This removes it from the conversation. So we could put this on in spring. I do think we should do this authorization. I don't want transportation to suddenly be shut down within 2 miles, which could happen. So I think we need the authorization. It needs to go before the voters. And I think that in my mind, we could look at it, this is what our district requires given our geography. I did look at what other districts are doing. Lakeland transports everyone as well. They're also, not really walking distance. In Westchester, you see a lot of different breakups, but a lot of those districts also have sidewalks. So Merge transports everyone. Brewster, I believe, is 0.5. Putnam Valley is very small, 0.3. Anyone under that, they don't transport.
Okay.
And how they do speak it out.
Yeah, Phil, but they explain that if you don't have a sidewalk near your house or a path to school on a safe sidewalk, you receive bus transportation, no matter what the distance. Sidewalk that can get you safely to school, then you're expected to walk.
But what are we currently doing?
So we currently transport everyone, no matter how far. We offer transportation from 0 miles. So basically, like if you live across the street.
So we need a resolution because there's none on the record that we can find.
We do not have currently, and
And
my
that's required
understanding,
in order.
it is required in order to transport under 2 miles. So we're kind of doing it in reverse, but
But
instead of
there's
stopping
no
trans-
change.
there will be no change provided it passes.
If it
But I think-
passes, but if it doesn't pass.
If it doesn't pass, we do have to stop transportation. But if somebody were to
Well, if they just complain, do we? Or if they,
I mean, not a big way. I believe there's a process in place and we can fully explore exactly what that is.
They probably would have to bring it to the commissioner.
Yeah.
this is really silly, but I feel like we probably did this last year. Have all the districts that you've spoken to, for example, have something on their record?
Most of them do.
Chris said this is not completely unique to Garrison.
Right.
That some districts made a decision somewhere to provide transportation for all and may not have come through the proper steps of getting a proposition approved by the vote. But the law is clear.
Right.
To do what we're doing, we are supposed to have voter approval. And therefore, it's her recommendation. I agree. I don't think if someone complained tomorrow, I'm sure the process, state ed, it would take some time, but the proper review is to put out a proposition.
And again, we don't, the November deadline was simply put forth as like, it removes it from budget season. It's not something we're talking about as part of the budget. It doesn't cost us anything really. We could do this in December. We could wait until we're doing the vote in May. That's really up to us, to what we wish to do. But I don't think this proposition is at this point.
What is the cost of holding a vote? Sorry.
2,500, just stated, I think, estimated.
It's
Maybe
not,
less.
it's not.
Yeah, the largest cost is just mailing out the notices and preparing.
Yeah.
Preparing those, the cost of the poll workers is smaller than that, so it's a few $1,000s to do the mailing.
And we were planning to do a fall newsletter as well. These two could be incorporated as one document, right? And we will still, regardless, do the fall newsletter. So that cost is happening.
One question.
Sure.
So the district is currently bearing the costs of the transportation within 2 miles, is that correct?
Yes.
So haven't we already authorized the expenditure for this year for that 2 mile transportation? So I don't understand really
You
why.
voted already said yeah.
Yes. You know, that was part of the budget process. I mean, for
The amount-
all of our expenditures, it's been voted on by the district.
We just need the proposition saying we are allowed to transport it 2 miles. And the 2 miles is because there's no state aid under 2 miles, correct?
Yes.
This is basically cleaning up so that we're totally doing it by the letter.
Yes. And as I anticipate, we will continue to talk about transportation. I think it's something we should do. I personally feel we should do all things correctly and by the law, but that's just.
What about your kid?
Yeah. Right.
So.
And it's not something that has to happen right now, but I
Right.
don't love the idea of connecting it always to the budget conversation.
So do we get state aid for this, for the transportation within 2 miles?
No.
Okay. So I
The
don't,
voters bear the cost of it, so they are supposed to have the ability to say they approve us to do it because
But
they're
if-
not getting aid.
but if I'm understanding correctly, and I could not be understanding. But the 2 mile requirement, or that the transportation within a 2 mile radius is not eligible for state aid. Therefore, we could provide transportation to those students as long as we bear the costs. I don't want to pretend like I'm a lawyer or an education. It's not clear to me. I am not clear on the resolution requirement.
Okay.
You know, I don't see why that's necessary. I would like to talk to council about it.
Okay.
I don't really understand where that piece is coming from.
Yes, we can definitely do a follow-up with council of this part.
I mean,
And I know it's a requirement, if we're going to transport within 2 miles, then you are supposed to have a resolution.
but I don't see that. I don't see the requirement based on what the statute that they cited. That's my question.
Even there,
Yeah, and I'm not an
you weren't
education.
part, well, you also weren't part of the discussion.
Right.
Because you're new to the board. But we did start the discussion last year. We started searching the archives. Chris and Chapman, who, as you know, has been more than 3 decades with education law, is very confident a proposition is required to transport within 2 miles. So I, certainly we could talk to her a bit more about that, but I don't think that's going to change. And it is her recommendation. So I think the only other thing, I'm sorry to kind of switch topics. I think it's important with the audience here as well. The cost is really nominal. And there's a reason for that, because geographically we still need the same number of buses, but we can save a little bit on time. That's all, right? It doesn't cost that much. Maybe Joe, I think the board knows this, but for the audience.
Yeah, so I can speak to so if you look at the next item, which is the actual resolution, it has in there, shall the board be authorized to transport students regardless of the distance, effective immediately, which additional transportation currently costs $16,200. And you think, what is that? So this year, we have in the contract with Orange County, a 5-hour workday for the large buses. If we didn't have to pick up the roughly 60 kids that are within the 2-mile radius, we could shorten the amount of time that it takes to pick up. Because, you wouldn't necessarily have to go down Lower Station Road, or there's places that we could avoid that are within the 2 miles. Then we probably get it down to just 4 hours. And the difference between the 5-hour workday and the 4-hour workday, based upon the current contract, is $16,200 for those buses. That's where the number came from. So we think we would still need the same number of buses. It would still have to travel to all the areas of the district which are eligible. But we think by reducing the number of stops that are close by, we could get time back into the 4-hour range.
So I feel like the voters already approved this cost, and so if you have a resolution in the middle of a year when it's already been approved, what happens to that money? Where does it go?
If it's approved,
Then we spend it, and if it doesn't get approved, then
I have the ability to update the contracts with Orange County and to say I only need 4 hours, because we retain the ability to reduce services at any time.
But this is less than if a new student moved in the district, goes to high school, we would have to tuition them out, and this is less cost.
So I'm just where I love the idea of resolution and referendums, and I would rather go out to our public for the $2,500 with more than one resolution on there. Then, like, why not have a discussion on what other interesting things would we like to learn from our community and put it on there, than just go out with just this one question.
Any suggestions of what that might be?
I might have some, but I mean, it's just like, there might be some from others. Like there's so many other things we could ask our community about. And secondly, I do think this is budget related, about money. So I don't agree that it's separate from budget in a sense, but I might not.
We can wait until May, and beyond that, I do think.
I like the idea of separating it, because it's already part of the budget. And because what if we're really just doing is making sure that we're following the letter of the law. We've already approved it, the voters have already approved it. We just want to make sure we have a resolution, so if someone walks in and fights it and says you shouldn't be transporting these 60 kids, you can still transport the 60 students.
I would just like to, for my own purposes on understanding, clarify what the letter of the law is on this point, because it's not based on what council has provided in the information that I've seen, which is what you provided for this
I
meeting.
provided the memo, yeah, because
It's
we
just-
weren't there there was a meeting last time, but it sounds like what I'm hearing is we need to have that meeting again.
I would suggest that we postpone this discussion for right now, which would mean we would not be able to make the November 14th vote deadline. Have a chance for you to speak with council.
I think we should do the groups, we're all on the same page.
Yeah. And if we decide to go to vote, there is, we can push it to the following month on December 12th, which is also a Tuesday. There's apparently quite a number of other school districts going out for votes on that day for capital projects or bonds. So it's a already somewhat popular voting day, and that might make sense for us to do that. And that gives Dusty plenty of time to hit all of the legal requirements.
And it gives Jocelyn some time to come up with some other interesting questions.
Why do I have to have those back?
Not to I wouldn't support putting other questions on the finding with the resolution.
Oh, but aren't they all separate?
I'm just saying, if we're going to put this out for a resolution, it should be on its own, unless we have to truly have another resolution.
Yeah, it depends on I view this really as a safety issue, having that, where we are. And so if it's related to that, it's gonna be another issue that
It relates to something that we're already, that we're not in compliance with.
yes,
Right.
we should do that.
I mean, and
That's
good.
good, but if it's like a straw poll of how the community feels, that's still that. Yeah, this is, should be on its own, very clear what we're asking for. We shouldn't muddy it up with other things, putting it at risk of not passing.
But most referendums have a slew of things to vote on. You don't have a separate referendum for every single issue.
This one actually, because I looked at districts where it was taken away and they had to put it up quickly to get transportation back. And it has gone up on its own because of that issue.
Right, but what I'm saying, in general, referendums are not single issue votes.
Capital referendums are.
Capital, but this is not capital. This is just like a referendum we're putting out there. I mean, a lot of referendums out there in the real world, in public votes are not, you don't have a separate one for each referendum on the ballot. It's one vote and everyone comes informed on how they want to vote.
Yeah, if it was compliance or legal thing, it's not budgetary. We need to save that for the budgetary. We can look at it. The timeline for December, how did that?
So are we considering December 5th or
It is 12.
That's not the timeline I have prepared for.
I know it's not, I
Yeah.
know it's not a timeline, but if we push that back about a month, does it generally push the timeline you had prepared out about a month? So that would give us till, say, next time we meet with council, we can have this discussion and then put it on for October, perhaps.
I'll have to rework some of this, but, and see how there may be some areas where it would push up some of the back-end requirements that I have to work on.
Okay.
I push up against the Thanksgiving holiday. Because you have those timelines then get shifted.
We'd probably be looking by the next meet, the October meeting. Discussion with council for them. Because we're talking to council already, are we allowed to add a topic? Can I add that to?
You're receiving legal counsel.
We'll receive it in copy.
Okay.
It's two goals. All right, so that means we're not gonna look to E, we're gonna remove E because this evening. Thank you. All right, we're now,
Sarah, on that note, do you want to take a jump back into the agenda changes?
oh, I forgot that today. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education so we're gonna remove E, so as amended. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the agenda as amended. May I have a motion? Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. Okay, apologies. You're so good. Good job, guys. All right, now we're gonna move on to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 1510, the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. Right. Kate. I don't want to put your last name. Valeria?
Calendar.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
No, where do I have to go?
Right up here. Come on up to the microphone there.
Do I really have to?
Yeah, that's a good way of recording. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Talagero. And I live on Lower Station Road, and I like my bus. I wanted to first of all, thank Mr. Alfano for all of your hard work, work day as well. And I wanted to just make a quick comment about sort of thinking about this moment as Mr. Alfano retires and we look at the future and we think about the future of the district. It's been a tumultuous couple of years, obviously, and this school has benefited so completely from the hard work of others, of the superintendent now, of the board earlier. And as I was looking at some of the comments at the meeting last week, you know, there was a lot of discussion around this idea of a merger and studying the idea of a merger. And I think that this is a really opportune moment for us to start thinking about what the feasibility is of the options in front of us. I don't know what those are. I don't know what those options look like. I don't know what the best path forward is for the school district. What I hope is that this board will put the appropriate time and energy into studying what those options look like. I know that there's a tax analysis that's going to happen. And I'm hoping that on top of that, we can start to consider also a feasibility study, which might put a little bit more rigor into what the options look like for this district so that we can have a really comprehensive conversation with the school and with the community around what we want the long-term vision to be. I think right now we don't necessarily have the right information to have that conversation with our community members. And it's really crucial that we be able to say, this is what the path looks like, given a couple of different options for 5 to 10 years from now. So that's the request, that's the comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ned Mack?
Good evening, everybody. Ned Rouch from Garrison. I wanted to echo what Kay just said and remind us all that during the work that we did on the vision of the graduate, and I was on that committee, one of the conversations that, one of the points that we focused on was hoping that our kids, designing a curriculum that would foster in our kids curiosity and also critical thinking. And as we look to the future of the district, I hope that we can remain very curious and think critically. And the best way, and a way to do that would be to study our options and gather the data. I think that's what we would encourage our students to do based on the vision of the graduate, which this school has adopted. I think we should behave kind of like we're asking our students to behave as we look at what appears to be a tricky transition into the future. Not just for us, but Haldane is going through is a tumultuous time for Haldane too. We have a change in leadership here. Haldane has a change of apparently all of its buildings. It's a time, I think, really to look at what works best for this community and how do we define that community. I define this community as a town of Phillipstown, not two districts that are struggling to afford providing basic services to their kids. I think we're one community that can provide great education to the kids of this community. That's one thing. Secondly, Carl, congratulations and sorry to see you go, but thank you for all your work. And to that end, also thanks to all the board members. Sometimes I feel like I come up here on a bit of feel like a scold. I don't mean to be. I appreciate all of your work and your time and your effort. So thank you very much. And then to end on a positive note, I just wanted to say that yes, there are problems with the school and the future and all that, but my kids are having a great time here and they're learning a lot. My first grader came home, he made this. Now you don't all have to agree that it's amazing, but I thought it was really terrific. And then he also told me that the sack that covers the lungs, if stretched out, could span an entire tennis court. You know, that blew my mind. I didn't know that was in there. He may not be right, but he came home from school telling me that. And then our daughter, she is on level 14 of Lexia, and I have not been able to understand what Lexia is, but she says that's great. And so, and she just switched from, she said we did 5 days of multiplication, and now we're on division, Daddy. And that seemed like a good thing. So they're doing great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Laura Madonna? Not good stuff.
Yes, I don't have props. So I'm Lauren Banderas. I'm the president of GSEP, and Harper Dion, who is the president of the PTA, wanted me to send her regrets that she can't be here with me tonight because she had a family event that had been planned in advance. So I'm sort of speaking for both myself as GSEP president and for Harper as PTA president, and just thanking you so much, Carl, for everything that you've done for us in this short but crazy span of time, and everything that you've accomplished that's, you know, delineated on paper is impressive enough, but for me and my family, and I know for many other families, what's going to always stand out for me the most is the strength and courage and care that you put in, all the school leadership put into navigating our kids through COVID. And that first, you know, that September of 2020, when I guess you had just, I mean, was it like your first, that was the first moment you were here, that from that moment, you absolutely were just an awesome leader. The people of every different sort of persuasion and comfort levels and everything, with all that mess of the pandemic, you managed to lead us into a place where if people were not comfortable sending their kids to school, they had access to awesome remote education. If they did feel comfortable sending their kids to school, they were able to do so safely. I'm not being articulate at all, but I really can't express how important that is and what a gift that was to our whole community. So we're really gonna miss you. Thank you so much. I know that you like birding with your son, which is why I have this really big bag here that contains an Audubon Society bird feeder and some songbird seed, and something to hold the songbird seed, and a huge bag to carry the whole thing, and a card from the PTA and GSEP board. They're really, really, very congratulations.
My son is the expert birder. I just kind of accompany him.
Yeah, but you could go home tonight and tell your wife that retired and they gave me black birdseed.
Thanks,
Really, it's
on the home front.
good bird seed for songbirds.
Thank you. That was incredibly helpful. Thank you very much.
They're so well. Thank you.
Anita Francis?
Good evening, Anita Francis from Garrison. And I want to echo all my colleagues and thank you, Carl. I got to work with you as well through the library, and people may not know that you actually gave a little graduation speech at St. Philip's Nursery School in June of 2021. So that was really, thank you very much, and best of luck in the future. I'm here because I have a new grandson who's going to be a future student at the Garrison Union Free School. So I have something at stake again. And I want to really echo what Ned and Kate have said about encouraging the board to consider a feasibility study to examine the possibilities of combining in some way with other educational systems, especially Haldane. And I wanted to just read from the state's guide to reorganization of school districts in New York. It's available on the NYSED website, and it makes these points. The primary issue facing a community is not whether the concept of reorganization or merger is good or bad per se, but whether combining available resources with a neighbor will provide a better and more cost-effective educational system to serve the future needs of young people and adults within the communities involved.
This can only be determined by careful study, committed leadership, and an involved and informed public. Gives a certain number. 56 school districts made the decision to reorganize. Others have considered such action but have decided to remain alone. Regardless of the ultimate decision, the study process has allowed all of these districts and their residents to gain a better understanding of their school, to re-examine their educational priorities, and to plan for the future. This, in and of itself, is a worthy endeavor. And as you know, the New York State Department of State has local government efficiency grants that pay for merger studies when two or more school districts request them. And they also pay for studies. Sometimes school districts talk to towns or villages about combining different parts of the operation. So when I was in your seats, I got on the school board in 2001. At that time, there were very separate opportunities for children in Garrison and Cold Spring to play together and do things together. Now, things are very, very different. Children play soccer together, Little League together. They are in plays together, they go to theater, but they can't go to school together. So something to consider looking at very seriously. So thank you.
Thank you. Charity Shellick?
Hi, I'm Charity Shumway. I'm a Garrison resident. And I'm here to echo what Kate and Ned and Anita have said. I am very much in favor of the board looking into a feasibility study. I'm appreciative of the fact that you've thought it would be helpful to do a tax analysis. But I think that we need much more than that. I actually brought a handout of the feasibility of the school district organization website Anita mentioned, and I can give it to Dusty copies or anybody can look at it. But I wanted to read part of it, which I think is very instructive. It says, as the boards of two or more districts consider the potential of reorganization, they will require information, support, and assistance from an informed neutral party. And I feel like that's really the key. I think if we are crunching our own numbers internally, this is a conversation that's happened in our district for decades. I actually brought another handout. This is from 1999 when there was an internal tax analysis, or it's partially external. But this has been a conversation that's been kicking around. And I think we do need the support and assistance of an informed neutral party. I think there are so many things beyond just what our tax rate would be. Would we have 2 middle schools? Would we have 1 middle school? Would we have 2 elementary schools? Would we tuition some students out? Would we all have a high school? There's so many questions that a feasibility study could answer beyond just what would our tax rate be, that I think would be so helpful for us as a community. And as Anita said, there are funds to pay for this. We have a small group that's been looking at this, and we haven't done a single school district that's had to pay for this by themselves. There are state grants for this. There are representatives who will kick in money for this. There are many options for paying for this. So I think we can get this done for free, and we can get the information that we need, which is beyond just, oh, what would our tax rate be, and conversation. There's so much more that we need to find out. And I do want to thank Carl for all of your leadership. And I also want to say, I agree that this is a moment when we can do this without feeling like we're threatening someone's job. You know, this is a moment when we do have an opening here and we can say, all right, well, who should our school leaders be? Do we need 2 superintendents in a town of 9,000 people? You know, what does that look like? So I really encourage you to consider this. And just the first step as laid out in this handy handout is just to have a meeting with the Haldane School Board and the district superintendent, who I'm sure you all have the contact information. It's also available in here. It's just to have a meeting. And I think that's a pretty straightforward request, and something that even those of you who are reluctant to do this, I hope would consider doing that to gain the information that so many of us are so eager to have. So thank you.
Thank you. Forgive me, coloring on the back of some of those. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else like to speak? Public, come on up. Just, I ask that you come sign in for me, please. You just come sign in.
Sure, I'm sorry I didn't sign before, but
That's okay. Come on up. Raise your hand. Appreciate it.
so thank you very much for letting me add myself to the list. I'm Stan Freilich. I also live in Garrison. I feel a little bit like I'm a voice out of the past because I was a board member a long time ago and haven't been here in quite a while. So first I want to thank all of the board members for their service. I know how hard it is to do what you're doing. These board meetings used to be televised when I was on the board, and my wife called watching them like watching paint dry. So I know how difficult it is to discuss in detail so many different issues. I support everything that's been said about the feasibility study. We've all read the local paper recently, which gave a history of merger discussions in this town, which go back at least 50 years. At least 50 years. Now, when I was on the board 25 years ago, I didn't know that those discussions went back 25 years further, but they have. And I think it's now time to have a really good feasibility study. When we put the addition on this building where we're now sitting, it's double the size of the building 20 years ago, we did some demographic studies. And at that time, there were 300 students in this building. I'm just asking Dr. O'Bannon that there are 220 now. We forecast that there would be 350 to 400 students. In fact, the opposite has happened. So I think it's time to do another demographic study as part of the feasibility study. Is this separate school really viable as the enrollment has to decline? We need to study it. So in addition to the feasibility study, I see that you have on the agenda approval of a budgetary advisory committee. That existed in my time. And I don't know if it still exists or if it's just about to start it, but it did exist. And that's how I got involved in the first place, by volunteering as a member of the public to join the budget advisory committee. I don't know if your budget advisory committee will include members of the public, but if it doesn't, I recommend that it does. There are people who are interested, who have knowledge, who could help. And I think the last point I'll make is, in addition to the feasibility study, I think your budget advisory committee should do a forecast of budgets, not just next year's budget, but what does it look like for 5 years or 10 years if you don't merge? If everything stays the same, what does the future look like? So thank you very much.
Thank you. If anyone else who wishes to speak this evening?
Sarah, can you have me real quick? Thank you.
Of course. Sign in for me.
Hi, Eric Arnold from Garrison. I don't really have anything to add, about feasibility study. I really value the school's independence. I think it's a really great thing. But what I value more are facts, and I just think I think we could really benefit from really having some facts. So that's all I'll say about that. What I do want to do is just take a moment to really thank Strongman. Carl, I really cannot imagine in any universe anybody leading the school through the last 3 years. I mean, it's just not possible. I've met a couple of your predecessors here, and I shudder. I don't want to say anything negative about them, but I do shudder to think what the school would be like with anyone else in charge. It's our kids have had just such an incredible experience here through your leadership, obviously, and your support of the teachers, the staff. It's really incredible. And, you know, when our oldest son started kindergarten, you know, kind of COVID, nobody knew the school was going to be open, and we did open. And that first day, and I'm sure we do have talked about this, but you know, Carl was out there welcoming kids to the school, and it was pouring rain. He was standing with an umbrella, and I remember our son was so nervous about starting kindergarten. I mean, he was visibly shaking in the car the way here to the school. You know, he had been in private pre-K, and then you know, obviously which had shut down for COVID, so he just had no context of you know, what school's going to be like. And there was Carl to walk in on his first day, and I still have the photo. I sent it to Carl. It is a memory I'll never forget, and I can't thank you enough for that. And you know, funny enough, I remember telling my parents that you know, the superintendent walked our son into school, and they were just flabbergasted. Like, they're like, where does it happen that the superintendent is outside on the first day of school welcoming you know, kids into the building? And I think that just speaks volumes about you. It speaks volumes about this place that we all love, and I can't thank you enough. And we're really going to miss you, but this school there is so much better place thanks to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Still open public comment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep our meeting moving. You're welcome to stay, please. Next up, we have accepting the minutes. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minute of the regular business meeting of September 6, 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments on the minutes as presented? Great, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Next up. Was it uploaded? Because I'm also not seeing it uploaded. Did anyone see that? Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
That's just not
Maybe do a refresh.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's on.
All right, I'm going to read through this. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the claims audit report for August 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So
Second.
Does anyone have any questions on the claims audit report as presented this evening? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Next on to approval of CSE CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education CSE and the Committee on Preschool Special Education CPSE recommendations and student placement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
You all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay. Next, we move on to personnel items. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. Please.
There's supposed to be a document uploaded.
There's BC.
So it's
Oh,
E and
it's-
E.
oh,
It's, so they're all grouped together as
Okay.
as presented, so that we don't go through everyone, but I am going to stop us and make us go through a lot of them. Just to keep you here longer. But these are ones that we're, so as presented. May I have a motion, please? So moved. Second, okay. So before we vote on this, the beginning one is just the recertification of our evaluators. Carl, Allison, and James have completed the training. We do have a resignation that Carl will speak to, but I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the retirement. And now that the public has had a chance to thank you, I want to thank you, Carl. I think it was my first year as board president during COVID as well. And I remember when writing this letter to send out to the community, all the things you've done for this district. And it's only been a few years, but pretty incredible. So you have my heartfelt thanks. for your work. I also want to let the board know that, while we're thrilled you are taking advantage of your pension and retiring, on your birthday, I believe. So everyone now knows exactly when your birthday is. We have posted for an interim for this year. You all have access to different applicants. I reached out to our district BOCEs, who has also asked, we are looking for an interim through the end of the year, and then we'll be looking for a permanent, which involves a search. So something the board's, a few things to start thinking about is how we want to go about that search. That'll be a discussion item on a future agenda. But just put it out there, if you have questions, you can always send them to me.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Of course.
On the permanent search. So what does the timeline look like for that?
Well, this is interesting because I've only been through this once. I'm kind of grateful I've only been once. But in a sense, while we really just got lucky that Carl's birthday is in September, we're going out very early, which is really good for us. The longer we have, the better. So we will be in front of the market, which is one of the reasons you don't do a search date over the summer. You can avoid it. Condensed, you can't get staff in the community way. So I think we're fortunate in that we can start this process soon, once we've determined an interim, and that will allow us to have community forums, interview maybe a little bit earlier than others. Last time, I think we started talking about the process in December, and we had interviews by April. Of course, the last time also COVID hit, we did all of those interviews by Zoom in April. It's going to be a lot of time for the board. I will tell you that right now. Hiring a superintendent is a time-consuming process. But I think maybe we could move that up a little bit. It'll depend on if we want to use a BOCE search group, if we want to go with an independent firm. These are all decisions we're going to have to make in the coming months as to how we wish to go about this search. But I am hopeful that we will be able to be out there early, and I think that's a real positive thing for us. That helped answer your question. But at any point during this, if anybody has any questions, please send them in. And if I can't find an answer, I'll figure out who can. I know there are a couple of us who've done this before.
I can also tell you, last time we used a private search firm, and after reviewing several options, and when they came in, they provided a very detailed and lengthy timeline of, because this is what they do, this was their experience of community forums, how to reach out to people, all the different steps. And so we do not have to know all of that. There will be people way smarter than us.
And I was really reassured by my initial conversation with our OCs, district superintendent, who also feels that they have a firm grasp on this process and is really ready and willing to help us through this. So we do have a lot of options to us. We'll have a lot of support, but keep the questions coming at any point, please, because this is a big part of what we'll be doing this year. And now to turn thanking you again for everything and recognizing your retirement. On a birthday party for you as well. So that's on there. And then next you'll see the acting superintendent. Mr. Yap will serve as our acting superintendent until an interim is appointed. And has all the qualifications to do so. Thank you very much. And I will point out this is in addition to his work as the director of innovation and learning. So thank you.
Can I just ask on that resolution, instead of saying interim, it says permanent?
Yes, Jocelyn, Chris Van Shannon provided it, and it's fine. Yes.
And then, Earl, do you want to take a moment and speak to the resignation?
Sure. Sarah Lasardi has been our office assistant in the main office. Most of the parents have had interaction with her. I'm sure board members as well, and she's just been outstanding. We're pleased and happy for her because she is moving on for promotion, and it's a great career step for her. While she was with us, she did an internship under Joe in the business office, and she is pursuing a career in public business administration. So she has a wonderful opportunity. We're behind her, but more importantly, I think for this evening, we just want to say thank you. She's done so much work that is not so visible, but behind the scenes, setting up new systems with our data management, student management, absent management. Those probably mean nothing to most people, but internally, she is very valued and appreciated, and we wish her all the best.
And this is a civil service position, so it will be posted through the civil service.
It is. So there is a process through the county civil service. That process we already initiated as soon as we received her letter of resignation. We are hopefully looking for someone who would temporarily fill in at the main office when she leaves until next week. So we have that posted as a per diem position while we go through the full civil service search process. So we'll keep the board posted, as we make progress as a district with that.
All right. Go ahead, unless anyone have any questions, other questions on the consent agenda? And then move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Okay, now under old business, we have the approval of the Budget Advisory Committee charge. Talking about this one for a while. Dusty did bring copies again of the Bedford, is that correct?
That's the Bedford, but this was the revised draft that
Combine some of that, some of the language, if anybody needs to see them. We have the Bedford one again when we were asked, have the other budget advisory committee, we met with other districts that have one to model it after. And Bedford is one of the ones that did have one. Okay, we need to see this again.
I just had a question on the charge.
Sure.
So it says such areas of focus will be determined annually by the Board of Education in consultation with the Finance Committee and School Administration. And then the last sentence says for each school year, the primary area of focus will be determined by the Finance Committee. Those seem to contradict each other.
I think I just didn't take that sentence out. So, yeah, so the first one, such areas of focus, yeah, we'll strike that.
Straight the last sentence.
No.
No, no.
the
So
middle.
middle, because I think we discussed
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Finance Committee
yeah.
and the Director.
So on that, can I ask, it has, when is the first finance committee meeting? Or I see here on the calendar that it's scheduled for December 6th, but I think we talked about
Moving that up, yeah.
finance is going to meet earlier.
So Ken, if you could see your finance could meet earlier as our chair, that would be excellent. And this is a great moment to point out that Dusty did include the committee meeting schedule. If you are a committee meeting chair and you haven't gotten back to Dusty on how these dates work, for you, please let Dusty know. Audit committee, we'll see, we're meeting next week, hopefully. We're still waiting on confirmation from the auditors that they actually have something for us to look at. But that's the earliest one on here. Although facilities, you guys have already kicked off. Good work. That's awesome.
Policy committee is still trying to find our first meeting time. I will get back to you.
Or September 26th is not it, right?
That was the,
Right,
talking
okay,
about.
right. So,
Yeah, you can
so
scratch that for sure.
that's okay.
Dusty was being hopeful. I was being hopeful. Dusty was, yeah, well, the three of us will talk after.
Back to the budget. Yeah, that's all right. Good time to drop this in without making a separate discussion. Budget advisory committee charge. So we've struck that in such areas of focus sentence. Do I have any other questions, comments, changes to this? Again, we revise this every year, so we see how it works for this year, and if we need to make changes, we can.
I say we go for it.
Should we finally approve this? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're good. All right. We're gonna go for it. All right. So, be it resolved, the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the charge for the Budget Advisory Committee as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions.
But who's on the committee with Jeff?
I think I am.
I think volunteered to do that one. Whoever doesn't have three, it should work out so everybody has three. Courtney's on it, maybe Courtney, I'll go back and look, do my math.
Yeah, yeah.
Jen's leading it. Thank you, Jen, for jumping in. I appreciate it. All right. New business. The Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please? Anyone have any questions on these? Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. We now come to our second public comment section of the evening. I'm not going to read my paragraph again, but again, policy 1510 is still in place. If anyone wishes to speak, sign in here. I'm going to close the second public comment session of this evening and move on to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn.
I will just thank Carl. It's been a pleasure. You're very professional and it's really nice to work with you.
David?
Yeah, I just would, on the subject of Carl, getting a lot of love today, and it's deserved. But I wanted to point out one of the ways in which you've really been extraordinary leader. The quality of faculty is a major achievement here because they're very good teachers here. They're here because you hired them. So thank you for that.
Jennifer.
But first, I'd like to thank members of the community who came out tonight to share their thoughts with us. I think that's a very important thing, and I'm really glad that you're here tonight. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate Carl. And now we all know you share your birthday not only with people, but with St. Leonard's.
I thought that was your shopping list.
We should make a list of everyone who shared.
I think you made a profit.
Dan?
I would just echo everyone else's comments. Carl, congratulations on 34 years of service in public education, which is amazing. We're obviously newer to the school, just beginning our second year with our daughter. But certainly, would echo everybody's comments about, just how capable of a leader you are, comes through everything. And the community that you clearly created and fostered here at the school with a great staff. So thank you for all of that.
Courtney?
Echoing what everybody else said. And it really has been such a pleasure working with you for the last 3 years. Can't imagine what the school would look like going through COVID. And you were professional and unflappable through it all. And I'll pick up on Jen's suggestion. You also share birthday with Avril Lavigne, Lil Wayne, and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Kath, where are you?
No, I mean, I've been here in Garrison now for almost 18 years. Truly, the school's never been stronger than it is today. You deserve a ton of credit for that. So can't thank you enough for that. I just hope that as a board member in our board, we can come up with a replacement that can fill your shoes, because it's going to be a very big challenge. But thank you again. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. You deserve this very much.
My turn. I'm going to take a look. I don't actually have a list of rock stars. Sorry about that. That was a requirement for tonight's meeting. Before I thank you, though, I do want to point out Jennifer and I got a little tour earlier of the sensory pathway down below in the elementary school. I believe it's designed for pre-K and kindergartners. And I hope that, especially as the community coming into the school on back to school nights, parent nights, they're able to test it out, see if they can do these little like push-up challenges, leapfrog challenges, all the math challenges inherently, where you put your feet on the ground.
We found the tippy toe.
Definitely failed the tippy toe one. My balance is not nearly as good as I thought. Not as good as a 4-year-old apparently. But I just want to thank James for putting that in and the rest of the staff for developing it and using it. I'm excited to see where that goes. And, you know, as we look ahead to this year and hope, you know, as we search for an interim, we can think about continuing the goals you presented and the presentation schedule that we've looked at, and maybe including some presentations on what we're doing for pre-K and how we're using that sensory pathway so the board can see the fruition of some of these programs. And I hope you all can go try that. Like maybe instead of going directly to executive, swing by and see if you can jump through it. And then Carl, thank you for opening the school during COVID, getting us through the $9.9 million capital project. I think you've done a tremendous job in terms of hiring who you tenure. I'm really proud of that. And everything we've asked you to look into, whether it be curriculum, and you feel like you've given it all. So thank you for all your time. Very sad your birthday is September. Yeah, that take that up to the pension system later. All right, thank you all. We're going to move to executive session. Be resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of receiving legal counsel and discussing probationary staff being considered for tenure. May I have a motion?
So
All right,